Good morning and welcome to And They're Off. Seth Merrill and Brian Addo. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Seth. Good to be back here with you about 6 minutes after we wrapped up the last show. But,
and I was going to say, we'll reiterate.
We should have switched jackets or something. That would have been
yeah, a little switch seats, switch jackets. Reiterate, I said at the top of the handicapper support and Memorial Day weekend, and always want to take a moment to remember the real reason behind the week, the holiday weekend. Thanks to the vets and current servicemen, and obviously Memorial Day weekend, thanks to all the people who lost their lives in service to our country. So again, wanted to take that opportunity just to recognize what the weekend is really all about.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, it's a great racing weekend, but certainly should not overshadow the real reason. We give thanks without a doubt.
So we did want to remember that on this Memorial Day weekend. But again, great racing. We'll talk about some of that. There was some yesterday, some tomorrow. Lone Star has the Lone Star Handicap today as a highlight of their card. As I say, it's a little bit disappointing, but you do have a Baffert runner in there, Danzig Candy, who will be fun to watch, I think, and we'll see what happens. Do want to remind you that our friends at Woodbine sponsor this program. Some of the other programming and events here at the network: Woodbine, pick, bet, and cheer on world-class horse racing north of the border. Coming up on today's edition, as far as our guest, a little bit later, Matt Hagerty from the Daily Racing Forum will join us. He's kind of the hard news guy for the Racing Forum, and there's been a couple interesting stories over the past week and a half or so I thought we'd touch on with Matt. A little bit later, we'll be joined by Ernie Munich, because on the holiday tomorrow down at Belmont, really nice stakes schedule in New York Breds, and those races are always kind of fun. There's some familiar faces, hard knockers, so we'll talk about some of the stakes tomorrow down at Belmont with Ernie. But I thought we'd kick things off just kind of going back a week. We're 7 days out now, 8 days out from the Preakness, and so I thought we'd do a little postscript on just the business side of things a little bit. And I wanted to touch on, I found it funny, after the Derby, which had big handle, big attendance, and big TV ratings, I thought, boy, that boded well for the industry. And then Preakness, they had good handle, they had good attendance, but the TV ratings took a serious drop. And one of the stories I read was the TV ratings were as low as they have been since ABC had it in 2000, but it was the best rated sports event on television last Saturday. So I thought that was significant because there were NBA playoffs as well. But the NBC broadcast, and we'll talk a little bit with Hagerty maybe later, because I heard him on the radio with Bick earlier this week, and I hadn't even thought about it, but he mentioned the weather. Weather wasn't so good maybe on Derby Day, better on Preakness, so maybe people are outside. But I did find it at least intriguing that it beat NBA playoffs. It was the best sports event last Saturday, but it was a little bit disappointing that the TV ratings kind of went south.
It's tricky because, you know, the Derby is just so far up here, and everybody's going to watch the Derby. Maybe, you know, you didn't mention this, and I don't really have a reason, so I'm just throwing this out there. Maybe the fact that a horse won on a sloppy track in the Derby was a little turnoff for folks, and didn't, you know, thought that, albeit was the favorite, but thought maybe it'd be hard to reproduce that, or in the fact that, you know, American Pharoah just won the Triple Crown a few years ago. Maybe people, it's, you know, for the casual observer, the been there, done that kind of thing. Maybe they lost a few people for that. You know, it's tough to say. The fact that it beat the NBA playoffs don't necessarily surprise me in that, and I'm the last person that should talk about the NBA, but the playoffs have been horrific.
Yeah.
So maybe people are just done with the NBA too. That could be possibly a reason as well.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There were a lot of people sitting on the sidelines waiting for the finals in the playoffs.
I'll tell you what, as you know, we were down there. I was there in person, and as Jeremy Plonk noted in our tent after each race, they were betting with both fists when they put the handle numbers up there. There were $6, $7, $8 million races, so they sent it in on Preakness Day. I'm sure the Maryland Jockey Club was pretty happy with the handle, even if the ratings, on NBC were not.
And again, I think there are maybe a multitude of reasons, and the weather may have played into it. But I also wondered if, and I thought we got a great kind of barometer on the mainstream media and how important they are in the Derby with the odds on Patch, because Patch had gotten some play. The Today Show and some newspaper outlets and whatnot, and he just went off at odds that said the casual fan had tied into that one-eyed horse story. And I'm wondering if there just wasn't as much mainstream coverage leading into the Preakness.
It's possible, and Patch is a really cool story, the one eye and stuff. But he legitimately, and I say this knowing who his trainer is, Todd Pletcher, as good as we have. My joke was that the graphics missing a 0. He should have been 130 to 1, not 13 to 1.
Yeah.
So you're 100% right. What the mainstream media can do, which is equally surprising, in Baltimore, that maybe the ratings were down a little bit.
Yeah. So I found that, as I say, a little bit disappointing, because I thought, and I mentioned after the Derby, I thought maybe it takes a year or two for it to catch up, that American Pharoah phenomenon of pulling people in and attracting. And so when things went backwards a little bit with the Preakness, again, however, and if you're a TV person, there are ratings and there are share. The ratings, when you see the ratings for a show, that's the percentage of everybody who has a television that's watching. The share is the percentage of televisions that are actually turned on. And so this is a similar type of a situation. The numbers were low, but it was the best sports event of the weekend. So I think that says something. Maybe there just weren't a lot of people watching TV, Let
me ask you a question. If you were home, I don't know what you were doing that day. The Derby, I went to a friend's house, so we had it on. If I was home by myself, on my couch, doing some different things, I would be watching the network. And that's not a plug. I don't mean to say that's a plug for OTB by any stretch of the imagination. I just would be watching the track feed on the network and puddling around.
Although we can't show the NBC.
Understandable, but I mean that's like what I would, or on the app or something like that. I would load up
that has always been. That's a good point, because that has always been one of the things about the TV ratings. Racing fans are at racing venues.
Yeah,
you're at a simulcast facility someplace, so that's not
I wouldn't
registering.
have it on. So I don't know.
Interesting though, interesting. But I also wanted to touch on, you talked about it the other day, just quickly. The Belmont. The Belmont is falling apart a little bit in that not going to get the Derby winner, maybe not the Preakness winner, but I think that makes for a good field and a good betting event. But
absolutely,
change the format. And you mentioned it the other day. I think Mormino, our colleague Anthony Mormino, I think he's for that. I could go either way. I could go either way, but I tend more towards the traditionalist area of keeping it the way it is, mainly because watch out what you wish for. I don't know whether it falls together as beautifully as people anticipate if it's May, first weekend in June, and then July 4th.
If you missed Anthony and I yesterday, we got into it, we chatted about it, and he was all for spacing them out to get the best horse race. And in theory, he's 1,000% right. Ideally, we want the best horse race every possible time. Don't allow these horses to skip the Preakness and run in the Belmont. And when I say that, not make it a rule, I'm saying Anthony's point was make it $3 million, space it out 4 weeks, point being so they can't skip it. They have to run because it's so much money and that kind of thing. I understand exactly what he's saying. In theory, I agree with him. I would be sick to my stomach if they do anything to change this. It's hard for a reason, folks. It took, 37 years to get a Triple Crown because it's hard. Things that define greatness are supposed to be hard.
But I don't
want to dumb it down to make it easier.
It may get harder if the good horses continue for one. I'm just not sure we're going to get that. And then you can't go back. You can't put the genie back in the bottle.
This is how it's supposed to be. This is how it's always been.
And also, do you does it add to the media coverage or take away from the media coverage? Now you're in the meat of the baseball season, and so I can see either way, but I'm tilting more.
3 races
towards,
in 5 weeks is a perfect storm for racing in the media because nobody gives us any attention, but we are in their faces for 5 weeks. You spread that out for 2 months or whatever. Oh, the Belmont's this week. That's right. I forgot about that. The Belmont's this weekend. I don't think you can do that.
Like I say, watch out what you wish for. And speaking of the Belmont, again, you know, Derby winner out, maybe the Preakness winner. We'll see how things shake out. But I think it's going to be a nice competitive race. One of the horses I'm going to be interested to see, and I think we have a replay here of the UAE Derby, and coming down to the wire, it's going to be Thunder Snow over Epicharis. And Epicharis is the Japanese runner. I thought this was a good performance by both of them. Subsequently, and a little later in the show, we'll watch yesterday's Irish Guineas. Thunder Snow recouped off of that freak performance in the Kentucky Derby. He winds up second yesterday behind the very talented Churchill. But Thunder Snow wins here. Epicharis second. To me, intriguing, the Japanese runner. Not so much off the layoff, though. He would have been more intriguing to me, I think, in the Derby. And he is the one who adds the intrigue, coming in foreigner off of this race. Boy, that's just too long of a layoff for me to get super
I don't know
excited.
if the layoff bothers me as much as you. I just question his class and his form to be in this race. With that being said, you know, there's no monsters that are going to be in the Belmont aside from Classic Empire. It's shocking that he's going to run. You know, whoever thought that? But I think it's pretty darn good for Naira. I'm sure they're psyched to get a horse from across the world to come in for their signature race. I don't think that hurts at all. He'll be live on the board, I'm sure, too. People will bet him. And he's the definition of a wild card. I'm looking at his form right now, and it's on paper at least, it's very good. I don't necessarily know what that means. The sad thing is, you mentioned it. It's too bad we have no idea if Thunder Snow is good or not in our country. It's too bad he couldn't have run 1.25 miles. Just finished 10th. I don't care, and let me know. Let me know where you stand in the pecking order of our horses. So you have no gauge whatsoever with Epicharis as far as running on dirt in our country against our horses. You know, you used the word intriguing. He is intriguing, if for no other reason that he appears to have talent and is catching a group, with the exception of Classic Empire, is catching a group that is the definition of there for the taking. So, who knows, Seth? You know, if I woke up Sunday morning and his name was on the newspaper, I don't think I'd be blown away. I can probably tell you he's not. I won't have him first or second, but if I'm not a try player, but if I was playing him, I think you probably have to use him somewhere. I don't know.
It's going to be a fun, interesting field. Classic Empire is going to try to get one of these classics. Obviously, yesterday working out in New York. Meantime, Tapwrit and Patch, who also could be in the Belmont. So it's going to be an interesting race. And if we do get 3 separate winners of 3 Triple Crown races, I said that may bode well for Saratoga. They may have to face off and try to get a winner, you know, a leader in the clubhouse before the end of summer. So we'll see how that works out. All right, we'll head to a break. When we come back, Matt Hagerty from the Daily Racing Forum. Again, there was some interesting news over the past week and a half, couple of weeks that I thought we'd touch on with Matt a little bit later on. Ernie Munich will join us as well, talking about some of the stakes action at Belmont tomorrow on the holiday. Stay tuned, and They're Off continues.
You're watching And They're Off on the OTB TV network.
What would you do with a brain if you had one?
Hey race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, and amazing Vegas-style atmosphere. The Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue, Albany.
Championship horse racing continues at Capital OTB. There's no better place to watch, wager, and win than OTB TV and CapitalOTBBet.com.
No matter where in the world you are, the excitement of wagering on horse racing is just a click away. CapitalOTB.com offers live streaming, past performances, race replays, our virtual tote board, analysis and selections from professional handicappers, and a simple, safe, and secure wagering platform. And best of all, you get track prices. Going on now, it's Bet 50, Get 50. Simply open a Capital Bets account, bet $50, and get $50 cash back. CapitalOTB.com. Log on today.
With 10 races totaling more than $7 million, it's one of the richest days in horse racing. It's Belmont Stakes Day, and you don't want to miss a minute of the action. And with Capital OTB, you don't have to. With more than 60 easy bet and branch locations throughout upstate New York, the Clubhouse Racebook in Albany, and online wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com, you'll find everything you need to make Belmont Stakes Day your day. So watch, wager, and win at Capital OTB. In a recent study of some of the top online wagering sites, Capital OTB won big in total player rewards, far surpassing some of the best-known wagering sites in America. While other rewards programs simply offer you points redeemable for gift cards, Capital OTB's rebates are paid to you in actual cash. Plus, Capital OTB gives you full and immediate access to your money. So if all you're getting now are points and gift cards, join Capital OTB Player Rewards today and get cash back. Visit CapitalOTBBet.com and sign up today.
Welcome back to And They're Off on this Sunday morning. Seth Merrill and Brian Edo. We are still trying to reach Matt Haggerty. When we do, we'll plug him in. In the meantime, I thought we'd touch on some of the action from yesterday. We talked a little bit about it on the handicapping show earlier, but we wanted to go back and touch on some of the stakes races of note yesterday. And I said earlier, the one that stood out, obviously, was Lady Eli, shipping across the country, going in the Grade 1 Gamely, mile and an eighth on the turf. Lady Eli will be the number 6 horse. Number 4, Goodyear for Roses, gives her all she could handle. And I said to you earlier, you got to think she's going to get past here. It seems like Goodyear for Roses. Right here, you think, oh, she's done. She's toast. And shows a lot of heart. You said earlier, does not have the brilliance she once had. But boy, as I say, it seemed for sure like she was going to get past. So to hold the horse off and really not let the horse make any ground once they got to about the back half there, showed certainly a lot of heart and a lot of guts and gets a Grade 1 win.
Yeah, especially as I mentioned earlier, if you didn't hear me on the handicappers report, as we were talking about this, she has developed a pretty bad habit of waiting on horses too. And I think it reared its head at Keeneland when Dickinson came by late. Now Dickinson is proven she's Grade 1 through and through, but this was a good win for Lady Eli yesterday over a turf course we know she appreciates out there. Won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies turf on that Santa Anita course. So I think for her connections, probably breathed a big sigh of relief that she went out, won a Grade 1 race, traveled. Now she's going to face better horses throughout the course of the year, and I mentioned it, I don't see the same brilliance I once did in Lady Eli, but that doesn't mean she's not going to win multiple Grade 1s this year. Yeah,
nice performance there, but I hear in my ear now that I think we do have Matt Haggerty joining us. Good morning, Matt. Happy to have you on. I'm in here with Brian Edo this morning.
Oh, hey, Brian, how you doing?
Good, Matt. Good to hear from you.
And Matt, I wanted to reach out to you because the past couple of weeks or so, there have been some interesting news stories, and you are the hard news. What do you have an actual title there? Because you are kind of the hard news guy for the Racing Form.
Everything but a horse race. I think that's my title. So
I like that. But again, you've had some nice articles over the past week or so touching on some big news, and there's one that has clearly some serious implications for horse racing, and that is the reintroduction of the Barr-Tonko bill. Paul Tonko, a representative up here in our area, encompassing, of course, the Saratoga racetrack, and Barr, I believe, is from Kentucky. So a couple of legislators, federal legislators with horse racing interests in their district. This is a reintroduction of a bill, I think originally, a year or so ago. Talk a little bit about the reintroduction, how the bill has changed, and where it stands.
Well, the first version of this bill under kind of the Barr-Tonko aegis was probably 2 years ago.
Okay.
the reintroduction is not, as you get down into the details of the bill, it's not properly a reintroduction. This is a very different bill. When you get into to the weeds on how this works, this is a bill that, from my conversations with the people that had a role in shaping it, seems a lot more streamlined than the other bill. The other bill would have basically appointed the United States Anti-Doping Agency, which is a private not-for-profit company, to this kind of overseer role in which they devise the drug policies, hand those off to the state racing commissions. The state racing commissions would be in charge of enforcing them, and there'd be some penalties if the states didn't enforce those. This version basically gets rid of that state racing commission enforcement structure. Licensees would be licensed on kind of a national basis, and then the penalties would flow through to any, say, racetrack that allowed someone to compete or allowed someone or allowed a horse to compete in contradiction to those rules and policies. So you do have a very it's more streamlined in that sense as far as the regulation. The other big one is the subject they avoided in the previous version because it is so controversial. And in this one, there's an explicit ban on any race day medication. As anyone knows, the only race day medication that's legal in North America is Lasix, which is a diuretic that's used to treat bleeding in the lungs. Horsemen in North America are pretty adamant that this is a beneficial medication on race day, that it does have an impact on the scope and severity of bleeding, and putting the explicit ban in it was basically saying that we're not going to count on your support. So while it was believed anyway by horsemen that Furosemide was going to get banned under the previous bill, just because of the kind of the ideology behind the people that supported it, this bill has that explicit ban in it, and I think getting consensus is going to be very tough, despite what looks like a better structure for national regulation.
Well, who supports and who opposes?
Well, the support is coming basically with organizations that are kind of aligned with the commercial breeding establishment. So you have the Jockey Club, you have TOBA. I'm sorry, I might be misspeaking there on TOBA. You have the Jockey Club, you have Breeders' Cup, you have the United States Humane Society. Oddly enough, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals came out in support of this bill. With the caveat that you must remember that PETA's ultimate goal is to abolish horse racing.
Yeah. Sure.
Then you have sales companies that are behind it. Keeneland is pretty much the only prominent racetrack that has come behind it, and the reason why there wasn't racetrack support for the other ones, now I do not, there is no official position from, say, the Thoroughbred Racing Associations on this bill. But the reason why racetracks didn't want to talk about this bill, didn't want to support it, and were prepared to step in if it got anywhere in the last session, was because of the penalties that we were talking about before, which would basically have rescinded simulcasting rights in states that weren't in compliance. So racetracks were really nervous about this one because, okay, what if horsemen wanted to put their foot down and say, we don't accept this because of the furosemide ban, and then they get in a squabble with the state racing commissions, and all of a sudden racetracks lose a revenue source that accounts for all of 90% of their wagering revenue. So they didn't like the previous version of that bill because of this. This bill would insulate them from those squabbles, at least. I have not had any luck in getting an official position from racetracks on this new version, and I think it's probably because this was introduced on Thursday. The new bill is substantially different, and most people are taking a look at this, and especially having their lawyers and their government people take a look at it to see what the impact would be.
Well, Matt, what would the trickle-down effect be on racetracks if Lasix was not allowed? We saw the Breeders' Cup try to go that way a few years ago, and basically they had to kind of go completely the other way when it wasn't supported. And what impact would that have?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to tell what the impact would be as far as, if tomorrow all of a sudden you couldn't administer race day Lasix, what would the impact be on say, field size? That is the one thing that the horsemen say is that they need this medication to keep horses in training year round. It's hard to say if that argument has any legs. In countries in which there isn't race day Lasix, they have pretty high field size.
Sure.
I think that one's kind of a paper tiger, especially when you look at kind of the physiological impacts of furosemide use. There's some evidence that it actually sets back a horse a couple of days because of the amounts of fluid loss. You're talking about fluid loss via diuretic at the time that the horse is performing at its maximum, capability. So you're dealing with a lot of stress on some physiological systems there. So I think it's very difficult, to say that there would be a measurable impact on say field size. Now, there is evidence. There's scientific evidence. The best study that's ever been done on furosemide is that horses that were administered the medication did not bleed as severely or as frequently as horses that didn't. So you have a very good argument from the horseman side to say this is a medication that benefits the horse physiologically. We're lessening the amount of suffering they are going to go through, and so that's why I think this issue is it. I think if you really truly wanted to get national uniformity, you'd stay away from this issue, and you'd press ahead with what you can get. And just all the conversations I've had with the organizations that have previously opposed the bill, their opinions have not changed one bit, and that is due to the explicit ban on race day medication.
So where does the bill stand now, and how do we know? I mean, when does it get like a thumbs up or thumbs down in Washington?
Yeah, all it is it's been introduced to a subcommittee of the House Energy and Commerce Committee. It's the same subcommittee that it was introduced before. It never got a hearing there. There is some belief among some lobbyists that there are particular racetrack companies that if this bill got to a point where it looked like it was going to have a vote that would carry it into a stage in which it would have a chance that they would intervene and ask members of the leadership that they might have an end to stop the bill. This is a tough sell for the current makeup of Congress. It looks like federal regulation. That is not a popular topic in Washington. And previous versions of this bill never came up for a vote because people that weren't members of the Congressional Horse Caucus, you have to remember that Andy Barr, who's a Republican from Kentucky who represents Fayette County and some of the surrounding areas of Fayette County, which is central Kentucky, and Tonko, who's a Democrat, are co-chairmen of the Congressional Horse Caucus. They are, answering the needs of their constituents here. Whether or not this has support beyond the Congressional Horse Caucus is a bit of a mystery. This bill also brought on standardbreds and quarter horses. They would be subject to the same regulations. The standardbred and quarter horse, let's say the standardbred and quarter horse people do not like taking orders from the thoroughbred people. So you have another problem there. So whether or not this goes anywhere, it's hard to say. I think you would need some different things to happen. And right now, I'm just not good at forecasting what Washington will do in the future, and I don't think anyone is particularly good at that either. So,
Matt, we just got a couple minutes left, but I just wanted to change topics for a second and get some thoughts because you wrote some articles on the Pan Am Conference. And first, for folks who aren't familiar, what is the Pan Am Conference? Who attends? What's the mandate?
Yeah, the Pan Am Conference is sponsored by the Jockey Club. It was kind of designed as a hemispheric conference for the Americas, and this was the second time that they've held it. The plan is to hold it every 2 years. This one was in Washington, D.C., which is down the road from the Preakness this year. The several days before the Preakness, and it's a look, at the issues that are surrounding horse racing in all countries, and as you may figure, the problems facing horse racing in most countries are kind of the same. So it's an effort to bring together people, internationally. I was kind of surprised there was a lot more than just the Americas represented there. A lot of representation from Europe, a lot of representation from Asia, and so it was 2 days of listening to kind of these cross-border discussions about what are the new issues facing international racing. Every country, with the exception of Asia, is trying to get into different markets, and breeders here in North America are trying to get into different markets because their revenues are down because of the foal crop contraction. So it's kind of a chance to expand that awareness, open up new markets, and meet and greet with the people of thoroughbred industries in other countries. And
you had a good article that I found really interesting, the lack of comprehensive data, a little bit of an obstacle to racing, and bettors in foreign jurisdictions. For me, that's more true here than in Europe, but I found in Europe that they feel maybe a little bit the same. Maybe they're just not familiar with the product more, because it seems like the data we get here is much better than they get in Europe or Asia, that we get for those markets. So that was interesting. I also found the Belinda Stronach article kind of intriguing, and that video gaming versions of horse racing coming back maybe for the Stronach family. I appreciate all of the new ideas they have. We'll see how that one works out, because it seems like a throwback to Frank. But once again, we only got about a minute left, but I did want to touch on your article on the Parks Oaks and that situation. Just update us there, because that was as quirky a situation as possible with the outcome of the DQ that wound up after the race was run.
Yeah, I've obviously been covering medication penalties and settlements for a couple decades now. I've never seen a settlement like this. This is a horse that tests positive for a very small level of clenbuterol. The horse ended up being disqualified in the amended settlement after they decided, well, this clenbuterol was below our testing limits, was that the horse would remain in first place. The second place winner would be elevated to first place as well, as if it were a dead heat, except the horse that tested positive for clenbuterol would not get any of the purse money. So basically this was a stop to the owners of the horse to say, look, when you breed this horse, you at least have the black type. The horse had never won a stakes before. And so it doesn't hurt that residual value, at the same time creating this bizarre result in which there wasn't a dead heat, but for record-keeping purposes in the breeding industry, it will be considered a dead heat.
Yeah, it was really a strange situation. Again, you can check out Matt's article in the Racing Forum. Matt, got to wind things up, but appreciate the visit, appreciate your work, which people can follow regularly on drf.com, and we'll talk again.
Take care, Matt.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
All right, Matt Hegarty from the Daily Racing Forum. And again, just we'll spend a couple of minutes here with some of the stakes before we go to a quick commercial. We looked at Lady Eli a couple of minutes ago. Diana, we mentioned earlier, possibly you mentioned the Beverly D. They're looking at grade ones for her going out.
Yeah.
Also yesterday, the Gold Cup out at Santa Anita. We talked about it earlier. American Freedom hadn't been seen since the Travers on the comeback into the Ali Sheba last time. It wasn't a good comeback necessarily. It was an okay fourth place finish, but it was over a sloppy track at Churchill, so you're expecting better. American Freedom's the #1 horse, throws in a dud for Bob Baffert, but Bob Baffert winds up winning with Cupid, and winning pretty convincingly. This one hadn't been seen since the Pennsylvania Derby last year. Missed a start in the Californian earlier with a little bit of a ding, but this was a pretty impressive comeback off a very long layoff, and now 4 years old. As I say, could wind up being a little bit of a player in this division.
Yeah, not that Arrogant needs any flattering, but American Freedom certainly isn't helping him out any. He's been terrible in 2 starts this year after chasing him home in the Travers, but the winner here, as we just saw him gallop out like a monster too. I need to see more, Seth. I mean, to me, this is as impressive as Cupid was yesterday, as impressive a training job as it was by Bob Baffert to get this horse to win Santa Anita's biggest older race, one of their biggest older races, by open lengths off a September layoff. Part of me it wants to believe, A, it was some of the horse, B, it was some of the other horses too.
But they aren't, and maybe on the day, but wasn't a field of tomato cans.
It wasn't a field of tomato cans, but
again, they aren't leaders in the division by any means.
But Midnight Storm, I think, as I mentioned on the Handicappers Report, he's going the other way now. And American Freedom, for whatever reason, is not the same horse that threatened to win big Grade 1 3-year-old races last year. I mean, this was a total definition of a no-show by him. Cupid has not shipped to New York successfully in the past.
And Baffert said after the race, shipping would be in the future because he wants to keep them apart from Arrogate, obviously.
I would be very apt to lay this horse in the Whitney and the Woodward. And maybe he comes for the Suburban. I don't know. In July at Belmont. But I need to see more from Cupid before I say he is a legitimate, the one to beat in our races like the Whitney and the Woodward, where there's not going to be tomato cans.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying, as you
he's interesting,
you
though.
said,
He's interesting.
These aren't tomato cans.
But we'll talk a little bit more about this division
better
in a couple of minutes. But I wanted to also show the Arlington Classic. Again, that subdivision, I like 3-year-old turfers. I don't think this was the strongest group of 3-year-old turfers in 2017. But going forward, Culture Cowboy, the winner, could be interesting. As we watch the replay, watch number 3, Gorgeous Kitten. As we pick it up, I think we'll get it at the top of the stretch. Sitting in the back of the pack there, he was about to swing wide, and then the jockey sticks to the rail, Amy. And I thought at that point, oh, he's done. He didn't have enough gas to get outside. But then he makes a nice late run. But by then, it's all over. Cowboy Culture gets it done for trainer Brad Cox. And they are saying Brad Cox also trains Arklow. So it's another one of those situations where you want to keep them apart, but maybe coming back at Arlington, the American Derby.
Well, don't forget, folks, this is the progression now which gets us to the Secretariat on Arlington Million Day. And you're not keeping anybody apart on Arlington Million Day because that's one of the few Grade 1 turf races for 3-year-olds. So you would think these are the kind of horses, and Seth mentioned a nice close by Gorgeous Kitten. Don't forget, folks, the Arlington, the Secretariat is 1 3/16. No, it's 1.25 miles, actually. It's the same distance to Beverly D's, 1 3/16. It's 1.25 miles. So a horse like Gorgeous Kitten running on at the end. But as Seth mentioned, that guy that I mentioned on the Handicappers Report, Brad Cox, we should be familiar with him now, but he is the next big thing, I think. He's one big horse away. I think he's almost like a poor man's Chad Brown in Kentucky. He doesn't have the stock yet, but he is on that level of winning at a giant percentage with everything he does. He just doesn't have the stock yet. If he gets it, look out.
And that was a nice win. That was a nice win yesterday. But to me, Arklow is one of the leaders of this subdivision.
Is a now horse.
So I think it's a fun this year. As I say, last year I thought the 3-year-old turfer is a little weak, whereas for the past 4 or 5 years I liked them. But it has been a good year this year. All right, we'll head to a break. When we come back, a couple of more recaps of action and a quick look at the older division, and then a little bit after that, Ernie Munich. We'll talk about the stakes tomorrow at Belmont Park. It's a New York Stakes kind of a day, so we'll hit on some of those in just a moment. Stay tuned.
You're watching And They're Off on the OTB TV network.
You hear that? It's the winds of change.
Not at the track and not near a computer? No problem. Wager with Capital OTB's Touchtone Wagering System and you'll never get shut out again. Capital OTB's Touchtone Wagering System is quick, simple to use, and guarantees your wagers are accurate and placed on time. For more information, visit CapitalOTB.com or call Capital OTB's customer service hotline at 800-292-BETS. Capital OTB's Touchtone Wagering System. Never get shut out again.
Come on.
I want sales reports on my desk by Monday.
Whoops.
My bad.
Love racing? RTN brings you every live simulcast on your home television, plus live video streaming and race replays on your PC and mobile devices. To order, visit rtn.tv. RTN, a breed apart.
And Frosted is coming with giant strides on the far outside. Here comes Honor Code. Here's the layer. Honor Code looked like he got him in the last stride. American Pharoah has lost the lead at the top of the stretch. Keen Ice has got him. Keen Ice has won the Travers.
Like to play Aqueduct or Belmont Park, but you live upstate? With Capital OTB, your favorite tracks are closer than you think. With more than 60 easy bed and branch locations throughout the region, you're just a short drive from all the top tracks across the country and around the world. For a complete list of all easy bed and branch locations, visit capitalotb.com.
Welcome back to And They're Off. Let's jump right in because there was a nice race across the pond, as it were, yesterday. The Irish 2000 Guineas, and we wanted to show that because Churchill is a very, very nice horse. And I know you follow international racing when you make notes for the Breeders' Cup, so certainly Churchill has hit your radar screen. 6 wins and 7 career starts before this race. He is in the Tabor colors there in that orange and blue cap. Taking the lead before we get to the finish line will be Thunder Snow. Again, the UAE Derby winner who freaked out in the Kentucky Derby. He's in those plain blue silks. He'll take the lead, and then Churchill will go by. Churchill, really talented for Aidan O'Brien. Ryan Moore on board. Thunder Snow will wind up second, but Churchill, a very, very talented 3-year-old over there in Great Britain and Ireland.
And I believe Ryan Moore said the best horse he's ever ridden, which is, you know, if you're not familiar with Ryan Moore, he is as good, if not the best jockey in the world. So that's heady praise there. Aidan O'Brien said to keep this horse at a mile. Look at this acceleration here. It's frightening. Keep this horse at a mile in the St. James Palace Stakes at Royal Ascot in June. It mentioned maybe stretching out longer in the year. They've got that Champions Day Stakes that Frankel ended his career at a mile and a quarter. The sky is the limit for Churchill. As you mentioned, 6 or 7. Lifetime was a Group 1 winner last year, as a better, more physically imposing horse this year. The big Guineas double is done for the 16th time, I believe. In 36 Classic winners for Aidan O'Brien, Irish Classic winners. So.
And here's what I read the Racing Post last week. O'Brien 20-1 for a clean sweep of the Classics. Aidan O'Brien 20-1 for an unprecedented, again, this was last week, clean sweep of all 10 Classics in Ireland and Britain. That's the girls and the boys. Yep. And he had Winter in today's 1,000 Guineas, which may have already been run, I don't know. But at 20-1, if 21 sounds like a long shot, that's a price for all 10 Classics. That's like 1 to 5. I mean, that's like Pletcher or Chad Brown at the beginning of the year saying, oh, they're 20-1 to sweep the Triple Crown, the Travers, the Jim Dandy, the Haskell, and the Coaching Club American Oaks, the Alabama, the Acorn.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I bet, I no pun intended, but I bet there are a few punters over there sweating that right now, or were sweating that at the start of the year that have live tickets. The betting shops over there that are saying, oh my goodness, are we 20-1? How low can we go on this guy? I mean, because as you said, in theory, it's about 20 million to 1. But that's just what he does over there.
To make a guy 20-1 to do that, but Churchill is part of that mix of why they're doing it. All right, and just quickly, our division to look at this week, the older males, and pulled up the Dubai World Cup because the two that are clearly at the top of the class ran 1-2 in this race. It's Arrogate over Gunrunner. They're clearly the leaders at this point. The NTRA poll that came out this week, Arrogate clean sweeps the top votes for number 1, Gunrunner second, Shaman Ghost third in there, and that's the 1, 2, 3. I think you have Shaman Ghost with the win in the Pimlico Special. A little bit all out to beat Dolphus, but followed up the Santa Anita Handicap, so I think he's third. I think it is 1, 2, 3, Arrogate Gunrunner, Shaman Ghost. Horses like Connect, maybe Cupid, maybe More Spirit are players in the division, but I think 1, 2, 3 is kind of set at this point.
Yeah, well, without a doubt. A Gunrunner's problem is anything past 9 furlongs. He's not a true 1.25 mile horse. Take nothing away from his run in Dubai. Probably wins some Dubai World Cups, but he's not a 1.25 mile horse. But he'll come back, and we'll see how he comes back in the Stephen Foster. It's not an easy thing to go to Dubai, come back, and run well. Obviously, Arrogate is up here. You know, my hand should go off the screen. That's how high, that's how better he is. Connect, I think, still has a few things to prove as a 2-turn horse against, you know, legitimate Grade 1 company. Shaman Ghost, as you said, you know, he was all out, but I think, you know, Dolphus was a horse that was a big pick for me that day. He is getting very good for Jimmy Jerkins.
And with the scratch in there, he became the lone speed.
And he became lone speed. Very good point, Seth, with Mark Cassie's horse coming out. So, you know, I wouldn't be too hard against Shaman Ghost. With all of that being said, they're all looking way up at Arrogate, who has shown to be otherworldly.
Yeah.
You know,
he's not going to race too much this year, but it's going to be enough to
Pacific Classic, and none of these horses we're talking about will be in there. So,
all right, we'll take a break. When we come back, Ernie Munich. We'll take a little look at the Memorial Day Stakes action at Belmont tomorrow, right after this.
You're watching And They're Off on the OTB TV network.
Man, what are we, a team? No, we're a chemical mixture that makes chaos.
Hey, race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook and get in the game. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, fantastic food and drinks, an amazing Vegas-style atmosphere with seating for nearly 900 of your closest friends. Conveniently located at 711 Central Avenue, right off Exit 5 of I-90 in Albany, the Clubhouse Racebook is the better choice.
I got it. Watch me. I got it. Hey! I got something that makes me want to shout. I got something that tells me what it's all about. I got a move that tells me what to do. If you don't, brothers and sisters, then you won't know what it's all about.
Equestricon.
Equestricon.
The first ever international racing convention.
The first ever. For the fans.
Meet the legends.
The breeders, the owners.
The jockeys like me.
The best of the industry.
Come celebrate racing at Equestricon.
With 10 races totaling more than $7 million, it's one of the richest days in horse racing. It's Belmont Stakes Day, and you don't want to miss a minute of the action. And with Capital OTB, you don't have to. With more than 60 easy bet and branch locations throughout upstate New York, the Clubhouse Racebook in Albany, and online wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com, you'll find everything you need to make Belmont Stakes Day your day. So watch, wager, and win at Capital OTB.
This is unbelievable! Zenyatta! What a performance! One we'll never forget. Looked impossible, but it is Zenyatta, still unbeaten under Mike Smith.
Welcome back to And They're Off, joined now by our buddy Ernie Munich from the New York Racing Association. You see him often on the pregame show. In fact, I think he was on as recently as Friday, Ernie was on. And good morning, Ernie.
Good morning, Seth, and I believe you're with Brian.
Yep.
Yes.
Ernie, thank you. Good to hear
Thanks
from
for
you.
having me, fellas.
Oh, happy to have you on board. And we're going to talk a little of the action tomorrow. That's why we invited you, because a nice card of New York bred stakes on the Memorial Day holiday card tomorrow. Before we do that, I wanted to touch on a couple others. Brian will ask you about one that ran yesterday and get your opinion, but I wanted to go back to last week. We talked to you after the Derby and got some thoughts there, but we haven't talked to you since the Preakness. What's your come away from the Preakness? Cloud computing, you know, it maybe takes a little of the luster away, no Triple Crown opportunity, but I've been saying this past week, maybe it sets things up for Saratoga and a showdown to get a leader in the clubhouse before the end of summer.
Absolutely, I agree with everything you're saying, but what I took away most from the Preakness is the outstanding and almost touching sportsmanship of the Cassies, and that brutal beat after doing all the dirty work.
Yeah.
And, you know, the old, I won't even use the cliche, but just mention it, you know, you win the battle, lose the war type of thing. His goal was really to set out how his I think Leparoux's ride was absolutely perfect. I have zero problem with it. And, I mean, he was trying to be, he didn't want, what is he supposed to do? Let the Derby winner get away? I mean, he didn't know the horse was going to cave. Was not going to have anything by the, by the 3/8. It just is what it is. So he pounces, and and then the Cassies almost immediately, you can just sense them almost frothing at the mouth. They wanted to get right back in the game. So they're like, all right, are you going to be okay? Let's do the Belmont. Let's do this Belmont. I mean, this type of sportsmanship really, really turns me on. And at some point, maybe he'll be, or maybe not. Hopefully he'll be dull, or he won't run through his race, and they'll say, oh, he overran him. They should have run him too much. Let me tell you, I get so freaked out when horses are retired prematurely. In fact, the fact that Coolmore is going to get him afterward already makes me nervous. That, who knows how many times we're going to see him again. But that he wants to run and compete, and my horse is better than your horse, this is the stuff I love.
Yeah, they'd like a classic win, clearly. And I'm with you. The Leparoux ride, he inherited the lead. It wasn't, people said, oh, he went to the lead too early. Always dreaming throughout the anchor. He had no choice. And so I have no problem with the ride either. But, I wanted to get your thoughts there. But also I'll throw it over to Brian, because Brian mentioned it in the previous show. I did not see it. I did not watch the whole card yesterday. But you guys were talking in the break, and I'll let him tee up.
Well, Ernie, I know you're a very passionate guy, and I was just kind of thinking as we were chatting earlier, what was your reaction when Ruba Linda just absolutely announced her presence in the final furlong at Belmont yesterday after blowing the start, going 6 furlongs as a daughter of Frankel? I thought that was nothing short of breathtaking yesterday.
Yeah, okay, so here's the truth. I'm going to trust your opinion more than mine, because I did see the race, but I haven't seen, I am not exactly sure. I don't have complete authority over yesterday's card, how the grass was playing. I did see the trip. I'm not sure about her competition. So I'm just going to say that she did save some ground. I'm trying to look for some negatives, only because what you saw at the end was so fantastic and so beautiful. And as you said, to see and that was to have Frankel's first winner in the States do something like that. And it's very exciting. And you just know there'll be no problem to a mile, that's for sure.
Exactly.
And, once she leveled off, and when you win by a few lengths, we had that the other day with Big Handsome. Anytime you win by a few lengths on turf, it's always, a lot more impressive than when you do it on dirt. I know you guys obviously know that. But some people, may underrate some type of performance, like, only won by 3 and change, or whatever the amount was. Yeah. But now she was very exciting. And this, by the way, gives people a reason to maybe go back and watch a few of Frankel's.
Yeah, that's a great call, Ernie. Oh, boy, that's the way he won races. You don't win races like that in Europe, and not only did he do it, but he did it, by running off the screen. Speaking of, we talked about Churchill earlier, his Guineas win was mind-boggling how good he was. So
yeah, it was.
And you chilled me. My body, I swear to you, my body is chilling listening to you, and which is reminding me of some of Frankel's races. And I remember putting, and I'm not, I'm the only time I'll bet more than $100 on a horse is if I'm betting with house money, and I might put, and it's rare, I might put a bunch more than that, but it will be with house money. I won't take out of my own pocket. But I remember betting the first time Frankel went 1.25 miles, St. Nicholas Abbey, opened 30-1 against them. I'm like, what am I on this planet? What the heck's going on here? So I forget, was it 100, 150 on St. I'm like, this is insane. I don't get. And Frankel does not disappoint.
Yeah.
He was just, I did it again. I had 29-1 or something on St. Nicholas Abbey. It was out of control.
I think that was
Breeders' Cup Turf winner.
Yeah, Champions Day, I believe, when he closed out his career, right at I think it was at Ascot at that point.
Was that his last race? Yeah, I think you're right. I think that was his last race. I mean, come on. I mean, you got to be kidding me.
But the name lives on, and did yesterday at Belmont, appropriately with a Chad Brown trainee as well. All right, let's jump in as far as the holiday card tomorrow. Again, a nice stakes card. Update us a little on the weather.
Yeah, that's the concern, is that they are saying, about, the weather people who were wrong more than we are, and except they're not accountable and they don't get cursed at. You know what I'm saying? So that they're predicting, approximately a half inch or something like that, which means that we have such an awesome track maintenance crew in New York that the track might probably be fast by the middle or late in the day. Depending on how much rain, we'll see if they're still on the turf or how it affects the turf. So I'm staying away from it, fellas. We figured I'll just talk dirt races, starting with race 7.
Yeah, let's jump in the Mike Lee, which is the nice 3-year-old race. Used to be the first leg in that Big Apple Triple, the Finger Lakes, the New York Derby, and then the Albany up at Saratoga. But 7 furlongs for the Mike Lee, $125,000 for the 3-year-olds. No Twisted Tom, who's the talented Chad Brown 3-year-old New York bred, but a nice full field in here. And I pulled up while we talked. I went back to last year's Funny Side up at Saratoga, because winning that day is Syndergaard, running second is Bobby on Fleek, and they both showed so much promise in their 2-year-old seasons, but the comeback efforts from both of them were disappointing. But, I mean, here we're seeing them at their best last year up at Saratoga. Can they rebound tomorrow in the Mike Lee, Syndergaard, or Bobby on Fleek, or are you looking in another direction? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm going to take... Syndergaard looked just the Champagne was one of the most exciting, toughest, tenacious performances of any 2-year-old. But his comeback, even with trouble, you think might have been a little bit better, even with the trouble. Like, if you saw the race, you think maybe he could have hung in a little better, or whatever it was. So I'm going to try. I'm just going to do something crazy in that race. It is such a tough race. I am not going to go with the choices in that race. On the very outside, pat on the back with Ken McPeak, who has run well at Belmont. He might be too slow, but it's hard to tell with his 2-turn races at the fairgrounds. His 1-turn races at Belmont as a 2-year-old were strong. He draws beautifully. He's handled a wet track. I'm going to take a shot with the 10, pat on the back.
Yeah, it looks like the kind of a race where you can take a shot, because nobody is really jumping off the page there.
And not only that, but, Ernie, I think we're allowed to tread lightly with Syndergaard. The fact that he's even in this race, this is a horse that was one race away from winning a championship possibly last year.
Isn't that something?
And now he's running in the Mike Lee off, as you said. I understand the trouble, but to kind of pick up what you were dropping down, he's got to run better than that at Churchill Downs, doesn't he? So,
absolutely does.
Yeah, I think it's the right time to take a shot against him.
All right, let's move on to the commentator. A couple $100,000 up for grabs for 3-year-olds and up going the 1-turn mile. Nice full field in here again. Some familiar names. Hit it once more for Bill Parcells and Gary Siaka. Royal Posse, always tough for Rudy and Michael Dubb. Empire Dreams, our friends at West Point Thoroughbreds. The familiar Governor Malibu. Who do you like in the commentator?
What a field! What a field! I mean, it's potential to be a race you'll never forget. I'm not kidding. I'm really not overstating that. I'm not saying that there's this Arrogate in the race, but what a field! You mentioned the 2 horses that I'm going to use. I'm going to use the outside, the West Point, Empire Dreams. It's an interesting barn change for sure. He's got the right style. He handles a wet track. The distance is fits him like Speedos. I think. Everything about this race sets up nicely for Empire Dreams. Now, the only question is if he can, is he get fit off the layoff? And I think this barn is capable. That's where I am. And hit it once more. It might be a really nice price. And from off the pace, not used early, will be off the pace this time. A very interesting play as well. I'm going to use both of them.
I like that. Fits him like Speedos.
That's a good one.
I'm going to use that one.
All right.
And finally, let's take a look.
And I've never worn Speedos. Lucky for the human race that I've never worn them. But they look like they fit very comfortable.
I'll put this out there. I don't think anybody should wear them, but except I guess if you're a racer, if you're a swim racer, works in the Olympics maybe. 10th race tomorrow, the Bowery 3-year-old fillies. Going 7 furlongs. Again, nice full field in here. I think you can make an argument for a few of them, but which direction are you going to go in the Bowery?
You know, I was about to go to Chad Brown, and then I got off because he's not going to be a big price anyway. I know the turnback will probably work. Out of respect for the way Ron Moquett has handled Whitmore and Whitmore's jockey Ricardo Santana, I'm going to the rail. I don't like the rail. I wish she weren't on the rail. But she's a very sharp filly to swing and sway, and the way Ron Moquett has been pointing Whitmore to the right races and not jumping in these, making the Met Miles, and he's just really prudent management. I mean, that's the type of he's not going to come here unless he thinks he has a shot. He's not, he's really pointing. Swing and sway seems a perfect fit for this race. Is she good enough? I'm not sure. Who has she been beating? That is certainly a legitimate question. But I'm going to take a shot with Ron Moquett from the rail.
Yeah, it certainly looked good against Open Company down at Oaklawn, and I think the 6-to-1's attractive.
Yeah, it is. And again, the rail, in general has not been fantastic here. But, again, who knows how that track is going to be tomorrow? I mean, we just don't know. And it is such a tough race, and there's so much speed in both of those races that, but sometimes, fellas, I swear I spend too much time thinking about how many speeds going to take each other out, and then a horse just goes, the best of them goes wider.
And two jumps out of the gate, the race is over, someone's loose. It's frustrating.
Exactly.
Ernie, as always, appreciate the visit. Do you know when you're next on the schedule for the pregame NYRA broadcast?
I'll be on Friday. I'll be on Friday with the at the 3 o'clock post time hit, which I think we start around 1:30ish or something like that.
All right, looking forward to it. Appreciate the visit this morning.
Ernie, take care and good luck.
Brian, thank you so much.
All right, Ernie Munich from the New York Racing Association. Again, a little bit earlier, we talked to Matt Hegarty from the Daily Racing Forum. Those were our two guests. Covered a lot of topics, and just a couple of more quick hitters. We got a shot here. We want to tip our cap to our friends at Zilla Racing, the partnership. Their silks are now mounted out here. I just saw them this morning. They're up by the kind of sports TV center on the far end of the room. The Zilla silks have been mounted here at the Clubhouse Racebook, so we appreciate the folks at Zilla. I know there's a lot of local guys that are in Zilla.
One of my buddies is in with them. They've got Benevolence today in the 5th race at Belmont, who has a winning chance. Got back on the beam a little bit last time, so good luck there.
So you can look for those Z silks there. And I wanted to pull up a shot I saw on Twitter over the past couple of days. Came on a Twitter account from Emily Shields. So this is a photograph by her. I have never been to Emerald Downs, but
that's Mount Rainier.
Mount Rainier.
You see that?
And you've been to Santa Anita, right? Santa Anita has a similar kind of a backdrop, but not quite that steep.
Yes, I might be getting my highway wrong, but I did travel the country, and when you drive by, I'm going to say 80. I'm not sure. Not going 80. When you drive on 80, you can go 80, but when you drive on 80, that just appears out of nowhere, and it is every bit as majestic and as impressive and imposing as that picture does. That's a darn good picture.
Emerald Downs with, again, Mount Rainier in the background. I've been to Albuquerque Downs, which has a mountain in the background as well, but again, not as impressive as that shot. All right, we're going to wrap things up for this edition of In They're Off. Seth Merrill and Brian Edo. I want to thank our friends at Woodbine for their sponsorship. Woodbine, pick, bet, and share on great racing north of the border. We also want to alert you that there is some nighttime thoroughbred racing available for wagering tonight at Capital OTB. That will include the Lone Star Park handicap. The Lone Star card will be in that nighttime racing here available at Capital OTB tonight on this Sunday night. So keep that in mind here in the midst of the holiday weekend. Nighttime thoroughbred racing available here at Capital OTB. Again, good racing tomorrow as well. Again, thanks and hats off to all the veterans, active service people, and again, memories to people who gave their life in service to our country. That's what Memorial Day is all about. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy the racing, enjoy the barbecues, and whatever else you have planned, and we'll see you again next Sunday morning.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.